Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? This is my review of the first two books in the Sacketts series by Louis L'Amour. I've read a bunch of books in this series, I want to say, like at least five, but it wasn't until recently that I became aware I haven't read nearly as many as I thought I have in terms of the entire series. I looked it up, and lo and behold, there are 17 titles in this entire series. It's like, oh crap, like, so I haven't even read, well, like, not quite a third as far as the math goes. I was on the Ironside podcast with Brett Kane a while back, and he asked me about one of the books in particular, and even out of the few that I had read, he's like, have you read this one? And I was like, dude, I don't know, they all kind of run together. Um, you guys know, well, maybe you're new to the channel. I'm a huge fan of Louis L'Amour's books. The ones that I've read, there are very few of them that I would even consider bland, and several of them are like life-changingly excellent. I still need to sit down with my marked up copy of Lost Treasures Volume 1 and put together my thoughts and do a video for that one. It was one of my best reads last year, and I still have Volume 2 that I've got to finish. Just an incredible book. The Sacketts is one of his most popular series, and it's just the multi-generational saga of a family that emigrates to North America from England, and it starts in the 1600s and it comes all the way up through the 1800s. You just see different generations of them through different times, going through different things. L'Amour is an historical writer in a lot of ways. He likes writing frontiers, but when he's writing historical fiction, he likes to write details that are accurate. His ethos was, you don't have to make things up. The truth is fantastic enough. I read Lando, amongst others. I remember the ones that I've read were in the 1800s, but I decided to start from the beginning and just read these through. The first book is called Sacketts' Land, and it starts with a character named Barnabas Sackett in the 1600s. He's poor, like he's a farmer, he lives in the fens, and it starts with him like walking along the wall of a muddy dam or weir or berm or something like that. He trips and falls, and his hand goes into the mud, and he ends up coming up with some old like Roman gold coins, and he's suddenly rich. But this causes problems. He tries to sell the coins. People think that he stole them. In his goings on, he ends up crossing paths with a gentleman, and they get in a fight, and a feud begins. And Barnabas ends up having to flee to America to solve his problems. But then he kind of gets shipwrecked in the Carolinas, and it's a series of events that are accurate to the period and to the setting. Even if, like, as far as story and arc and stuff goes, the point of it all does not seem immediately apparent. By the end of that first book, though, Barnabas has returned to England, and he resolves both his financial and his legal issues and stuff for the most part, and then he's going to return to America of his own election. I liked the ending of that story, specifically because, like, he didn't flee and emigrate to avoid crime, avoid problems, and then just like stay in the North American continent and never go back because he didn't have a choice. Like, going of his own choice, I think, was more significant for him as a character. And that's where Sacketts' Land ends. Today I just finished the second book, which is called To the Far Blue Mountains. This is a reference to, the mountains of Virginia. That's where he wants to go and get set up. I expected him to go there early in the book and have the book take place in Virginia. No, he spends most of the book trying to get across the Atlantic. And as much as it pains me to say this because of how much I love L'Amour, this book bored me. I wish that it were not so, but as a reviewer, like, I want to be honest, and like, you need to be able to expect honesty from a reviewer, and like, I need to be allowed to be honest, frankly. Love L'Amour, this book was a chore. Ooh, that was good. Just because there was so much of it being like, okay, we got here, we've got to sail a ship. Oop, we got stranded here, we've got to steal a ship. Oop, we got to deal with this guy. This guy's mad at us, or whatever. Like, I think this was just an exercise in Lamore wanting to show various historical details of the time, but the underlying story element of it was not as potent as it was in the first book. But by the time Barnabas does get back to Virginia, to the colonies, things are heating up between the Brits and the local Native American tribes. And this is where I appreciate Lamore's fair hand as an historical writer, too, because he's not coming in and blaming the white man for any problems that were caused. Like, he talks about how there was contention before Europeans showed up, there was contention after, there were good relations between the two, there were times when the Indians just started crap because they felt they could, and one Indian guy shows up, steals something from one white guy, and suddenly both sides are at each other's throats. Fair or not, that's an accurate historical depiction of the way these conflicts began based on how people viewed their what's the right word here, like what their tribalism was like at the time, and he depicts that fairly. He even gets into the whole, like, Powhatan, the father of Pocahontas, that whole incident there at the end. John Smith doesn't pop up and get a bunch of dialogue, but he gets a mention. That shows you what the time period is, like what the time frame is. Excuse me. Down at Jamestown. I'm curious to keep going with the series, but I'm not super hot to trot just because of how much I wanted to get through this one and now read something else. But my main reason for wanting to keep going is that I like the idea of multi-generational stories like this. They have a value. Think of Yellowstone. Now, I'm going to just level with you guys right here. I've never watched Yellowstone. I've seen the clips and reels and shorts pop up. And I have spent the odd evening on Wikipedia, looking at episode summaries and stuff. Be like, okay, what is this show even about? Why is it so popular? Because it is tremendously popular, but then I also heard that Kevin Costner left before the season really wrapped or something. I don't know. So that he could do this Horizon movie that he's in. And I've seen adverts for a prequel show called 1923 and another prequel show called 1880 something. And it's multi-generational. It's about the different members of this Dutton family that came over from overseas and eventually found themselves in Bozeman, Montana, and started ranching and stuff. So after the first season of Yellowstone was popular and Kevin Costner's character was popular, they decided to show prequels. I am intrigued by the concept of looking at the current generation's old men and realizing that they are the young men and the descendants of previous older generations. I find value in that because it makes me think about my own generation and how I connect to previous generations before me. I've talked about that in my last couple of videos, I feel like, with a few of my family history stories. What sacrifices did they make so that the next generation would have something of benefit? And am I appreciating that? What advantages did prior generations give me, and what can I do to build on that to give those advantages to my kids? I feel like that's where these multi-generational stories really resonate. If the 21st century 60-something-year-old Kevin Costner character has been managing a ranch of, I don't know, hundreds of acres and defending it from eco-terrorists and climate alarmists and stuff like that, how did his family come to occupy that land to begin with? What was it like for them to establish it? How hard was it to secure it? And once you understand that, you might appreciate why he worked so hard to maintain it and to expand it. And you go from there. There's value in thinking about which link you are in the chain between the past and the future. So that's why I want to keep reading these Sackett books. Aside from the fact that I give Lamore a tremendous amount of leeway, even when I read a book of his that I haven't tremendously enjoyed, there are still bits in it along the way that make it worth the read. And I'm curious to see what the series will look like by the time I get all the way to the end of it, having read all of them. So while I won't aggressively endorse either of these, I guess. I still will recommend Lamore's books on the whole. And if you've read any of the Sacketts and you got a favorite one, let me know in the comments below. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.